I'm just wondering here, and indeed wandering here actually, but I'm wondering about the idea of wonder and what wonder is, and particularly about the relationship between this thing of wonder and religious sentiment. If I can start with religious sentiment, just to see if I can find the relationship that I'm groping for here. What I mean by religious sentiment is a kind of disposition or a kind of attitude, a set of feeling responses, if you like, related perhaps to behaviours and observances, but grounded within the certainties of the body, the kind of submissions and commitments and engagements that the body makes, that kind of a kind of being-centred set of, as I say, dispositions, set of attitudes. And I think, one of the problems I have with religion, I guess, is that it seems to demand that kind of an engagement. It isn't usually enough that you believe the truth claims that religion makes. I know some religions do require you to make some kind of a belief statement, whatever that may mean. But I'm not sure that's the heart of it. And it's certainly not necessarily the problem I have with it. It is a problem, but it doesn't just ground out there. Nor is it necessarily to do with any kind of claim for moral authority. I have a big problem with the moral authority religion claims, but that's not the problem I'm talking about right now. Nor is it to do with the supposed individual or social function that religion may or may not have to do with providing consolation or holding communities together or whatever that may be. Again, I do have some problems with those things. They seem a bit fascist at times and they seem a bit childlike at times. But again, that's not the specific problem I have right now. It's to do with this attitude. Given that I'm kind of assuming religion is a form of knowledge or a form of knowing, a way of engaging, a way of being part of, it seems to require that you have a certain attitude towards it. Maybe one of to do with the sacred, or maybe one to do with reverence, or maybe one to do with the ecstatic. And here I'm reminded of what I've read is termed ecstatic naturalism, which is a term that I think someone called Corrington came up with, who I was pointed to recently by someone on Facebook. But you also find it in kind of mathematical versions of theology. So even though the kind of truth claims that you get in mathematical versions of theology aren't mythic in the way that kind of resurrection stories are mythic, they have some kind of relationship to the physical material world. The attitude towards them is an attitude of reverence. The kind of attitude that Ursula Goodenough talks about in Sacred Depths of Nature. Again, the truth claims, and maybe even something to do with the moral authority that's cited in there, is grounded in a materialism, physical materialism, the nature that we can probe using the tools of empiricism and rationalism. But the attitude one is allowed to take to that is, again, one of reverence and one of kind of bowing before the sacred, which is a problem for me. And the problems are to do with, well, firstly, what is the point? If you are describing the natural world through maths, through any kind of rational process, what's added to that by larding on a particular attitude? It just feels like a kind of epiphenomenal addition. There's no need for that. The situation is fully described without an additional description outlining your attitude towards it. What's gained? So that's the first problem I have towards it. And also, it just feels a bit totalitarian, really. If there are a set of particular statements made through the process of mathematics or through some kind of rational engagement with nature, then I'm not sure if I like the idea of being told how to feel about it. It seems an unnecessary encumbrance, really. Guy, Phoebe, come on! So those are the problems I have with that. In fact, I shouldn't even have to believe in this stuff. I shouldn't have to believe in nature if I don't want to. It doesn't change nature, even if I think it's an illusion. But how does this relate to wonder? And this is the only point of purchase I have on that, actually. This is a very small point of purchase. But I'm thinking about wonder in two ways. Firstly, I'm thinking about wonder the way that it seems to appear in scientific writings. People like Dawkins, Carl Sagan, fantastic, and a whole range of other people who write about science, particularly popular science writers, or writers who try to popularize it, who absolutely do try to evoke a sense of wonder, a sense of standing on the shores of nothingness, as I've heard it put, and kind of gazing out into this, into the natural world with something approaching awe. Non-religious, on the surface of it, at least it doesn't have the kind of truth claims for moral authority, all of those trappings and observances that formal religious practices have. It's just a kind of disposition. Phoebe, Guy! No, they've disappeared. I'm hoping they'll show up at some point. But the other wonder I'm thinking about is the wonder that appears, I think it's in Husserl. I'm not that up on phenomenology, perhaps someone will help me on this one. But certainly I think in Husserl he talks about wonder as a kind of pre-existing necessity for phenomenological inquiry. So that when one approaches a phenomena, approaches a perception or an imaginative state or something like this, one brackets off the familiarity, one suspends that familiarity, suspends the to-handness of it, the routineness of that engagement, and approaches it kind of with Martian eyes, with a sense of wonder. And then that's followed by the various phenomenological reductions that allow you to do something with that initial perception. And I think there's something quite useful about that. I think there is, given that these things... Actually, where am I going with that? Well, just there's some kind of relationship there, I think, in which trying to formalize, if you like, or trying to bring to conscious awareness this initial sense of wonderment, which allows one not just to look at a phenomenon, but to look at one's relationship to the phenomenon, not just to look at the world, but to look at one's being in the world and the complexities of that being, is just has the potential for a kind of healthier engagement or a more interesting and complex engagement, without necessarily forcing the commitments that lie alongside that. That kind of wonder doesn't necessarily lead to the adoption of certain truth claims, doesn't necessarily lead to the adopting of any sense of moral authority, doesn't force you to buy into certain kind of functionalist accounts of what you do with that wonder, and doesn't demand wonder of anybody else. Doesn't. The reality it leads to doesn't go away when you stop believing in it. But paraphrase Philip K. Dick here. Oops, bike coming, need to get out of the way. Morning.